Automate consistent follow-ups post-eval. This is where the magic happens. In most physical therapy practice, the eval is just the first step and it just gets things started. It's what you do after that creates the magic in the practice. In physical therapy private practice, the evaluation is the first handshake. The first step is the eval. The patient steps into your ecosystem, sees your process, and gets a taste of your team's expertise. But what happens after the initial visit will often determine whether they complete their plan of care or disappear. Most physical therapy practice owners are very preoccupied on how do we get more new patients? How do we add more evals to the system? How do we get more evals to this office, to that office? In my practice, I need more evals. Now, we're all preoccupied with that. The issue there is it doesn't put any kind of emphasis on our existing patients and how do we retain them longer. And we don't always put in systems or track, what is our visits to discharge, or how do we improve that system in keeping the current patients we have. Now, to be honest with you, it's a lot less expensive to keep a patient than it is to go get a new one. Now, here's the cost of silence. What happens without follow-up? Now, follow-up is what I was referring to as what happens after the eval. That is very crucial. The average outpatient PT clinic spends hundreds, if not thousands, on marketing to drive new patients through the door. But acquiring a patient only to lose them after one visit is the ultimate sunken cost. Clinically, the patient never gets the full benefit of care. Financially, the clinic eats the acquisition cost and loses all potential downstream revenue. Not to say that only, but it's also not good for our reputation if the patient is only treated one visit. If they go back to the doctor, they say, no, wasn't happy there, they didn't do a good job. It's not a good look. Why do patients ghost after their evals? This is a question that a lot of owners ask all the time. And quite often it's they didn't fully understand their diagnosis or plan. Sometimes as a clinician, you're rushed through the process. You understand everything, but we don't translate it very well to the patient. They weren't emotionally sold on the value of consistent visits. We didn't do a good job on explaining why the consistency is important. So, they start to feel a little bit better. They're like, well, I don't need to go. They go home, life happened, and inertia won. We didn't do a good enough job keeping in touch with them and constantly making sure that they understand that physical therapy should be their priority right now. Otherwise, their symptoms are going to return. No one from our office checked in on them. Now, that's a big one. Somebody cancels their appointment. They don't have future appointments. Nobody actually went and reached out to them for maybe several weeks or maybe never. So that patient just got lost. This isn't always a reflection on clinical quality. It's a reflection on operational gaps. Without structure, intentional communication, that post-eval window becomes the Achilles heel. And that's why the first 48 hours after eval is your golden opportunity. Why automating the 24 to 48 hour window follow-ups is crucial. Right after that period of time, the patient's in your office, they get a bunch of information, and as we all know, they maybe retain a little bit of it. So an email or a text follow-up that just goes over some crucial things, expectations, is very important. Now, an email follow-up can go into more detail about what you saw, the importance of frequency, the importance of it, but it's a touch point. The more touch points that we have with our patients, the better that we have. It'd be great if the environment allowed for a phone call, like many surgeons do. After the couple hours after the surgery, they'll call, follow up with the patient. The patient feels good that the surgeon followed up. It's a great touch point. In physical therapy, we can do that as well. You can also automate it, to a lesser degree. That's at least something. Even if you're sending out a text that's automated, these are all touch points which are necessary to retain the patient. What should that message include? Reinforce the diagnosis and treatment plan. Hi, John. It was great having you in the clinic yesterday. Based on your eval, we've designed a custom treatment plan to address your knee, rotator cuff, whatever issue. Following through on the sessions we've scheduled is key to helping you get back to your goals of running, walking, whatever it is. This solidifies the connection between their goals and your care. Secondly, express personal attention and accountability. We're here to go over every step of the way with you. If you have any questions about your next visit, exercise, what to expect, just reply to this text or give us a call. This kind of language gives them a safety net, reducing drop-offs due to confusion or lack of confidence. Third, preview what's next. Your sessions will begin with manual therapy and targeted strengthening exercises to do blah, blah, blah on key points. Now, you're just giving them an idea of what's to come. Include their next appointment detail. Just a reminder, on the next visit is Thursday at 3 p.m. We're looking forward to seeing you. Now, this also plays true when you see them in the clinic. You always ask them, when is your next visit? If they can't answer it, you make sure they're told when their next visit is before they leave. What are some delivery options? Text versus email versus hybrid. Texting, you have to make sure things are HIPAA compliant. There's HIPAA compliant softwares out there that'll allow this. You can ask me and I can get in touch with you. It's ideal for quick delivery. Patients see it quickly on their phone. It's a quick reminder. Email, it's better for longer forms. You are allowed a lot more information on the email. Hybrid, mixing both, I like that personally. It allows for two different forms of communication. I like to say scripting it once, reaping it forever. Write it down what your expectations are of your staff and make sure they understand it. They can definitely make it their own, but at least you have some kind of guidelines that you want your clinicians or your office staff to be able to tell the patient. What owners should monitor? Eval to visit conversion. How long are we retaining our patients? I have a metric that I use for my clinics, and it's a discharge, visit to discharge. It lets me know on average, how long are we treating the patient. There's other forms of eval to visit conversion statistic, first week drop-off ratios, follow-up engagement rates. Now, there's an endless supply of statistics one can keep on different metrics. The key is making sure your software also prevents patients from going too long without appointments. So there should be follow-up. Final thoughts, I want you guys to be instead of reactive, I want you to be proactive. Now, what does that mean? It means start thinking strategically, start thinking in ways of how do I retain the patients, how do I communicate with the patients. You as the owner probably can do it all. But the whole point of building a company is not going to be on just you doing everything. Your clinicians have to be good at it too. So either create a step-by-step process that you want your clinicians to execute and your front desk staff to execute, so everyone is on the same page and more patients get retained. Now, I know in many of the clinics that I work with, the owners have the capability of doing everything. They execute it very well. Now, as a staff clinician, some of them are learning. Some of them are in there to make sure that they're doing a good job with their patients, but it becomes more of a routine. Now, what we want to do is make sure we're educating everybody enough for the whole process and not just their process. Hi, my name is Amit Gaglani. I'm a private practice physical therapist and an entrepreneur, and I've successfully been able to build my company and sell my company, and now I coach and do consulting for other physical therapy practices. If you've liked what I've had to say, please reach out and like us and subscribe to us so I can keep sending you guys more videos. Have a great day.